Hey Who fans, and welcome to the Big Blue Box podcast. My name's Gary.
My name's Adam.
And we're at episode 108.
Woo!
One day, I shall come back.
Oh dear, we are in trouble, aren't we?
I've reversed the polarity of the neutron flow, so the TARDIS should be free of the force field now.
I have the advantage of being slightly ahead of you. Sometimes behind you, but normally ahead of you.
Well, the trouble with time travel is, one never seems to find the time.
Change, my dear. And it seems not a moment too soon.
Unlimited rice pudding, etc., etc.
A meteor storm, and the sky above us was dancing with lights. Purple, green, brilliant yellow, yes!
I'm the doctor, by the way. What's your name?
Rose.
Nice to meet you, Rose.
Run for your life.
It's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
Just remember who's standing in your way. Look at the eyebrows. These are attack eyebrows. You can take bottle tops off with these.
Howdy do. Hope you guys have had a fantastic week and that you've managed to do something Doctor Who in your lives. My name's Gary, joined as always by Adam, the Geek's Handbag. We are your TARDIS team. Welcome aboard the TARDIS, welcome aboard whatever else you want to call it. How have you been, buddy?
I'm fine. I'm still shuffling to the music, still shuffling away.
It's grooving along.
Yes, I'm really good, mate. Thank you. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad.
How you diddling?
Not too bad. I'm sweating.
So it's a little bit hot.
It's just a little bit, yeah. Those listeners are not in the UK. We're having a bit of a heat wave at the minute, which is quite uncommon for this time of year. So normally in the UK we have about 3 days worth of good weather throughout the summer. And then the rest of it is just mediocre, filled with like the odd good day, mostly grey, rainy, whatever. But at the moment it's just like yesterday was like 31 degrees or something.
Yeah.
Which is unheard of in September, because normally at this point we're sort of dipping into, it's normally like 15, 16 degrees.
It's so nice, isn't it? I gotta say, yeah, we're making the most of it.
Yeah, it's double what it normally is. I think
before
it's really hot.
Before it turns, yeah.
Yeah, before the crap. I was hoping for some big storms, weren't we, yesterday, but alas.
Yes, I love a good storm. As long as I'm inside, I love a good thunderstorm.
I love a storm.
Yeah, watch some creepy TV.
Yeah, like some old Hammer horror.
Yeah.
Like those old, when a car breaks down in the forest and it's thundering and lightning. The only thing, around is a big spooky house up on the hill or a big castle or something. That old school.
I love the Hammer horror stuff, I have to say. Yeah, classic stuff. So, yeah, what have you been up to, mate? Any Doctor Who stuff this week?
Yeah, no, not really. Not really. I haven't really had the time. I mean, the only thing I've done sort of Who-wise is I had to do a bit of commuting, so I've listened to a bit of Big Finish on the train. I went back and listened to some old Big Finish that I picked up ages ago when I first got into it.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
So that was The Chimes of Midnight.
Oh, brilliant.
I was prompted to listen to it by something I saw on Twitter, actually. Some people had put on their, it might have been Big Finish themselves or somebody else. They put some photos of the new limited edition vinyl.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Like the full cover and the inserts.
I know.
It looks so good. So I was like, right, I'm in the mood for that now. So I listened to that, and Spare Parts as well. So there's about 3 or 4 that I picked up all in one go when I first started listening to Big Finish. So yeah, Chimes of Midnight and Spare Parts.
I think Chimes of Midnight is still one of the best, actually, because I recently sold a copy of it. Because I had two. Cool. Because what I'd done is I'd bought it when it very first came out, and I liked the free download. So when they did a sale, it was like £5, and I thought, I'm just going to buy it again and get the free download, and then I'll just sell the spare copy, which is what I did, not knowing that they were then going to rocket in price because they deleted the first 50. But anyway, but before I sold it, I thought, well, I better listen to it and just check it's all right. And it's just such a great story. I mean, just listening to it again, because it's one of the early ones, isn't it? It's one of the first, well, it's one of the first 50, obviously. But it's a really cracking McGann story, that one. And I would love to get this vinyl. I was talking to a friend earlier in the week about the vinyl, saying about, because it's just been released, isn't it? They've brought the release date forward, I think, slightly, so it's come out a bit early. And I have been eyeing it up, thinking, maybe close to the time I might fork out for it. But it's just a little bit expensive, isn't it? It's about £79.
Yeah.
And I think it will go up once it gets released. I think that's like the pre-order price, and then you have to pay postage. But yeah, I'm still keep looking at it. Did you pre-order it in the end or not? No.
For the exact same reason. Because there's a big chunk of me that was like, no, I just don't mind the price because it's such a great audio story, and the vinyl cover, and the case, and the liner notes, they all look so good. It's a really good, especially as you and I love vinyl, it'd be a really great thing to have.
It would, yeah.
But it just borders on that, just too pricey. If it was like £60, or 50 quid, it would have been okay. But when you're pushing up to nearer the £100, when you're closer to 100 than you are 50, it does make it a bit like,
yeah. I'm thinking that as well, because I'm thinking back to the record store day when I got the Doctor Who exclusives from that. So they did the Genesis, the Dalek purple vinyl, blue vinyl, whatever it was.
Oh yeah, they look awesome, don't they?
And they were great. And the soundtrack to Dalek Invasion Earth, which was a double pack with yellow vinyl, and they were around about 25, 35 if you could get them in the shop. I know people sold them for a lot more on eBay, but if you could actually get them in the shop, and I thought, well, that's half the price, less than half the price of one vinyl for Big Finish. So I do feel it's a little bit steep. I think, like you said, I think I'd have been tempted around, well, sort of 35 really. I would have snapped it up. 40, 50, I probably would have pushed to it. 80, it's just that little bit too much, although it does look gorgeous. But I just can't. My wallet just just can't take the battering at the minute. But yeah, I would love to get it.
Yeah.
Not going to lie, because the spare parts one comes out next year, and that again looks blimmin' gorgeous, doesn't it? The spare parts cover that they've released.
Yeah.
So, and that's another great story.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay if you don't own the story and you're into vinyl, this would be a cracking, way to listen to it as a first time.
Yeah.
But yeah, seeing as we own it already as well, that's another aspect as well. It's not like we haven't heard it and we can't listen to it anytime we want. It's just I don't know, it's just the bragging rights. In your collection. Yeah, it's the bragging rights of having it, the special edition on vinyl. It's just, but then, I can count on one hand the amount of people that, look at the stuff on my shelves. So
that's true. I don't let anyone near my shelf.
Break my bloody fingers if they come near it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Oh, what's this little figure?
Get behind the line. Behind the line.
Yes. And put those white gloves on, please, if you're going to pick anything up.
Actually, having said that, I did notice this morning that this is caked in dust. My shelf. I need to give it a clean. But talking of audios, like I've been listening to an audio that last week actually, which was brilliant, and I must mention it because I was unsure whether to order it just because I didn't know the company, but it sounded intriguing, and I'm so glad I ordered it. It's the Baker's End from the company's called Bafflegab, I think. Is that how you say it? Bafflegab? Baker's End, which stars Tom Baker and Katie Manning. And I think it's fair you would describe it as bonkers. It's a really fun, mad story. And you know how we often talk about Tom Baker being sort of quite obsessed with death? He goes on about it quite a lot, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Well, this sort of centres around him being dead, but actually turning out not to be dead, and sort of well, it's just a really crazy story that sort of revolves around that. And you can imagine having him and Katie Manning sort of together is bonkers enough. So yeah, I tell you, I just sat and I listened to it, and I've never heard of Bafflegab before, but I'm definitely going to get the rest of these because as soon as I ordered it, as soon as it was released, I got the free download, same as Big Finish do. So I immediately had the download, and then the CD popped up in the post like 2 or 3 days later. So I was pleased about that because, you know what I mean, I sort of got the physical thing as well. Oh, cool. But yes, by Paul Margs, I think that's how you say his name, who does a lot of the Big Finish writing as well. He's actually written it. And I tell you, just for a bit of light-hearted fun, it's well worth a listen. Yeah, okay. And it was like $9.99 as well, free post, so it's a good reasonable price as well.
It's good, yeah. If you want the download, that's only $6.99, so that's not bad.
Yeah,
not bad at all.
It's well worth listening. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I tell you, it's out in the sun, legs out, Tom Baker, Katie Manning. It's doesn't get any better than that.
Oh, sounds good. I might look at that, actually. Looks very good.
Yeah, the reason I can't begin to describe what it's actually about is A, I don't want to ruin it, and B, it's just so crazy that I wouldn't know where to begin. It's one of those things where you just have to sit back and listen, and it's just fun. Just a lot of fun.
Yeah. Just the opening line of the description is really funny. Peevish actors are descending mournfully upon the remote English village of Happenstance for the funeral of TV legend Tom Baker. It sounds very morbid, but it sounds very interesting anyway.
Yeah, I was going to say it sounds morbid. It's really not. It's really funny.
Cool.
Yeah.
So bafflegab.co.uk.
Yeah, I mentioned it because I know it's been floating around. A few people have said, I don't know whether to give it a go. Is it any good? And yeah, it's definitely worth a go.
Okay. Yeah. Good beans.
Yes. So that's it, mate. But I haven't really been doing much else Doctor Who-wise this week, I have to be honest. After watching our review app, I'm kind of... Because it's in part of a box set, isn't it? Obviously, I'm sure our listeners know we're reviewing the Romans today, but it's part of a box set, and I was kind of tempted to watch the other one, but I didn't get a chance. What's the other one that's in it? Is it The Rescue?
The Rescue, yeah.
Yeah. I would have liked to have found time to watch that, but sadly, I didn't.
Yeah. Yes. It's definitely...
You sounded a bit like Basil Brush then.
Well, that's a name I've not heard in many a year.
That's a name a lot of listeners won't know.
Yeah. Definitely an interesting review for the Romans coming up. So stay tuned for that. But first, though, we have got some rather interesting news to talk through.
We have, yeah.
So shall we land it?
Yeah, let's land it.
Now, this first one you told me about, and you when you said this to me after I'd gone away and read into it and stuff like that, what you wrote to me in the follow-up tweet was the exact words that I had in my mind as well.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Oh, how strange.
So Adam told me about this, and I went off and had a look, and then as I was thinking it, Adam tweeted it to me, and that was, "It's a real shame that the Moth doesn't have Twitter anymore."
I know. I used to be on it.
Yeah, I was thinking exactly the same thing, because this would have been an epic showdown.
It would have been. And the thing is, it's strange, because last week on the podcast, we were talking about Twitter spats and how fandom seems to be turning on itself, and even the writers and stuff from the show were having to go at each other. I think we were talking about Gareth Roberts, weren't we? And
that's right, yeah.
Him and a few... who was it? Benjamin Cook, and that had a bit of an argument on Twitter. And then things have really hotted up again since. It's really strange how everyone's seems to be falling out in the Doctor Who fandom, not just the fans but the writers and that now. So anyway, the story is
yes. We all know for a while now that John Barrowman has been uber keen to try and get Torchwood back onto TV. That's no secret.
Yeah.
And although he hasn't been doing too bad up to this point, because we have had a lot more traction sort of come out of various things over the last year. So Big Finish have put a massive push behind Torchwood. We've had 4 or 5 audio stories out.
Yeah, at least,
already. So we've had a new range of Torchwood comics as well. So they're doing okay. The fans are, as far as we know, it's all been well received. So, it's in the right direction. And there were actually, I've just thought of this. There was I saw the front of a cover of a magazine in the shop day before yesterday, and it had the cover was just a photo of John Barrowman, and it said the strapline on the magazine said John Barrowman's push to get back into British TV. And it had an interview about him, spending a lot more time now, because I think he's those of you that have watched a show based on DC characters. So a few years back, he starred in Arrow.
Oh, that's
with
right.
Stephen Amell and so on. And now he's like a regular in that show. And I think he's been cast in another superhero show. So he's doing quite a lot of those US kind of, superhero comic booky type stuff. But I think he wants to come back to the UK for some reason and do a lot more TV here. And one of those driving things is Torchwood. However, he feels that there's a certain person, rightly or wrongly, that's been sort of blocking the path, so to speak. And that person happens to be, with little surprise, the mothball.
Yeah.
And I was kind of surprised when I heard this, because I've never heard Stephen Moffat ever say that he's not a fan of Torchwood, or he dislikes it, or he's never said there's been an issue, has he, with Torchwood?
I've never heard him mention it. No.
Yeah. He doesn't talk about it much anyway, but the little snippets that I've heard in interviews and stuff like that over the years, I've never heard him say, Torchwood's a bad thing, or it shouldn't be on telly or whatever. So it's kind of weird that it's come to this. But I'm going to play you a clip. This is John Barrowman actually saying it. I don't think Adam, the audio setup we've got, I don't think Adam will be able to hear it, but it's only Adam. So hold on.
Without giving too much away, I was on a phone conversation with one of our executives, exec producers, telling me the obstacles that we have to face in order to bring it back. And I don't like to see things as obstacles, because my feeling is that it's a good show, it deserves to come back, and I'm being told that it can't come back until it's got approval from certain people involved with Doctor Who, and I don't understand why one show has to have the approval of another in order to come back. But that might change when somebody leaves and somebody new and wonderful comes in. Thank you. You're welcome.
Oh, John.
There you go. So he doesn't actually say,
He doesn't name names.
He doesn't name names, but it's 99.9% obvious that he's talking about Stephen Moffat. Mm. So the Moff is unhappy, isn't he? He doesn't like the finger being pointed at him.
No, and he's actually given a statement, isn't he? Quite flatly denying. And I'll assume you're going to read the statement, are you? I'll let you read it first.
I've got it here. I'm not going to do his accent.
No, do it in a BBC News reporter's voice.
Because it's a rather awkward, so Scottish accent at the time. Yeah. So he says, "You may be aware that John Barrowman has been saying publicly that I've been blocking a new series of Torchwood. To be very clear, I haven't blocked it. I wouldn't block it. I wouldn't even be able to block it. I didn't even know a revival had been mooted till I read about it on the internet. As John perfectly well knows, it's not my show, and I could do no more to prevent it happening than he could cancel Sherlock. I am bewildered and a little cross even to be included in the conversation. For the record, I really like this show, especially the third series, and would be happy to see more. Monsters and Mayhem, why not? But the fact is, it has nothing to do with me. Please pass this on to the anxious and the angry. I've had enough hate mail now."
Oh dear.
End of quote. So he's very unhappy that, John Barrowman's pointed the finger in his direction as, the person who's supposedly blocking the thing.
Yeah, so this is strange, isn't it? Because I think John Barrowman, the thing about Barrowman is every interview I've seen with him recently, he clearly loves the character Captain Jack. He's keen as mustard to come back into Doctor Who or Torchwood, or preferably both. So that's great. We know Barrowman's on board. And he's clearly been trying to sort of make this happen. So he's been talking about phone calls he's going to have and all that. And you can almost feel the excitement brimming underneath that he can't wait to tell us this stuff. So I think when this phone call happened, whoever it was with, and it didn't go the way he hoped, I think he's just finally snapped, hasn't he? He's just sort of said, sort of I can understand it as well. He's sort of like, oh, for goodness sake, what's the problem? The fans want it. I want it. What? He's like, yeah. So I think when he was on stage, he's just, I don't know whether he was thinking of saying it before he went up there, but I think he's just got to the point where he's fed up and he's just let rip a little bit on stage. And, but the thing is, if the Moff isn't responsible, and we're assuming that Barrowman thinks he is, there's clearly some confusion in the middle there, isn't there? So I don't really know what to believe, to be honest, between the two of them.
Yeah, I'm sort of inclined to lean towards the Moff in this one, because I don't think that he would jump out quite quickly and publicly to say all this stuff. He's obviously wants to put the record straight.
Yeah.
And in my mind, what's happened is sort of John Barrowman has been sort of joining the dots together to sort of lead to where the problem is. and he's sort of come at the wrong side. So I believe what's happened is he's been, chipping away at whichever bunch of execs or producers are going to be, would potentially make a new series of Torchwood. And they've said, right, it's a bit of a tricky time at the moment because we're on the hiatus with Doctor Who. That's coming back at Christmas. And then we've got the new series, new showrunner after that. Plus we've got Class coming in. So there's a lot going on. So, maybe it's not the right time for Torchwood at the moment. So in his mind, he's thought, well, why has the Moff said that? Because he's probably been told, the guys who are making Doctor Who, is probably not the right time at the minute. So in his mind, Doctor Who is Stephen Moffat because he's the showrunner, he's the guy behind it all. So he's probably some way there. He's sort of politely been told, it's not now. And he's thought, right, the guy behind Doctor Who is Stephen Moffat, so it's his fault.
Yeah,
that's what I think. He's sort of, he's doing his math and he's coming up like a 0.5 out. His calculations are out a little bit. So it's definitely a good old gruck, though, isn't it? That's why we said it would be great if the Moff was on Twitter still, because you can imagine the to-in and fro-in between him and John Barrowman. It would be so just entertainment to watch them two going at it. But
yeah, I know what you mean. I don't know what to believe. I would love to see Torchwood come back, but I can't see it happening anytime soon. But it's either that or perhaps when John phoned. And the secretary answered the call. She's like, "Oh, it's John Barrowman again." "Oh, just tell him the Moff said no." "Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, the Moff said no." And, they just blame it on the Moff, put the phone down. But I was surprised that he came out and said what he said on stage. I was a little bit surprised because to me, it did clearly point the finger at the Moff. I was thinking, well, he can't be talking about anyone else. It's just blatant. So I was a little bit surprised. And then I'm kind of glad that the Moff has responded, because if he hadn't, in my mind, I wouldn't have thought any different. I would have thought Barrowman was right. I would have thought, blimmin' heck, Stephen. So I'm kind of glad that the Moff's come out with this statement, because it just gives both sides, and you just have to believe what you want to believe. But yeah, either way, it's a bit of a mess.
Yeah, you can just imagine John Barrowman looking at that message from the Moff and be like, oh, yeah, probably should have thought a bit more about opening my mouth there.
Yeah, well, that's what I meant when I said I think he got to that point where he just probably needed to let off a bit of steam, because I think we've all done that. We sort of, you know what you shouldn't say, but then sometimes you just get so passionate about something, you just got to get it off your chest. I reckon that's what happened, and he probably went backstage afterwards and thought, oh no, what have I done? Yeah,
he's probably on the phone like, I might have done something rather rash. Could be a bit of a backlash on this one, but at least it's out there now. Mm-hmm. Then again, it's an avenue for him to voice his opinion, isn't it? If he's just sitting there at home shouting at the walls, I want Torchwood back now. That's not going to get anywhere, is it?
No, that's not. So we'll see what happens. Obviously Barrowman hasn't responded to this yet, and I think there's obviously, this is a very complex thing. This is not a case of, it's not an easy fix. You can't just phone somebody up and say, yeah, let's make Torchwood, and it goes into production the next day. So it's quite involved. So there's probably going to be a bit more comes out about this, I should think.
Yeah, and also the earlier comment he made about he doesn't understand why, one TV show needs the approval of another one to get made. I think he just, for me, I think he needs to be a little bit more not so naive about that, because at the end of the day, Torchwood is a spin-off of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So although it stands on its own 2 feet most of the time, and it doesn't need Doctor Who for some of the storylines that was in Torchwood, at the end of the day, it still is a spin-off. So, the main show, the flagship show, which is Doctor Who, it needs, the people who are making all this stuff, all those clever bods that sit in the office and say, we should keep Peter Capaldi inconsistently over the next year. Those clever people, they're the ones that need to be like, right, we have to do this properly. We can't just say, yes, let's go ahead and do Torchwood. It needs to link in a certain way, and it needs to be done right. So it's it is funny on one hand, but it's interesting. It's really interesting on the other to see where it goes next. What's John Barrowman going to say now? In response to the Moff's message. So.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing, and I'm totally guilty of this, is I always assumed that Moffat wrote the character Captain Jack, which of course he didn't. And I was just naively, because he's in the episode that the Moff wrote, because he was created by Russell T Davis, wasn't he? The actual character, yeah. But obviously the Moffat wrote Captain Jack's sort of first story that aired on TV. So, it's interesting, because obviously Russell's got to be involved somewhere as well then, because he created the character. Maybe he doesn't particularly think it's right to bring it back, because when Torchwood was on, the two series, like you said, kind of gelled together and worked alongside each other. So you kind of want that again, really. You don't want it just sort of been, made at the wrong time and put out there. And so Russell's involved as well. We wait to see if he has a comment to say. That'd be interesting.
Yes, indeed.
Anyway, in other news, there has been a brilliant interview with Christopher Eccleston, chatting on, it was an Australian radio station, I think, ABC Melbourne. I was trying to find it before while the music's playing in the intro, actually. Chris has talked about Doctor Who over the years, but he's never really given too much away. But in this interview, he was probably the most candid I've ever heard him. And you've heard the interview, haven't you?
Yes. Yep.
He basically talks about how, because there's been a few stories in the press about how he regrets not doing a second series. And I wondered how much of that was just the press taking something he'd said and twisting it. But having heard the interview, I think he really would have liked to have done another series. And it sounds like he would have been totally up for doing another series if he wasn't so unhappy with the way the first series was produced. Because he actually talks about the production being a disaster, doesn't he?
That's
he uses those words. He said wrong directors, and just the pressure. And I think they were quite behind on the schedule when they started the series. So everything was very pressured and that. And I think he just, on reflection, I think looking back, he said he loves the character of the Doctor. It's one of the best sort of characters you could get into, and he would have loved to have taken what he'd done in series 1 and improved on it and done another series, but he just felt that the sort of whole production side of it was a shambles and he couldn't commit to another series because of it. But it's a fantastic little interview, isn't it? It's only that the clip we listened to is probably about a minute and a half long, but he's just so honest. I've never heard him talk so openly about it like that.
No, and we've had interviews with him in the past, haven't we, where he said most interviews will always get onto the subject of Doctor Who, and you can see his face change. Like, here we go. I knew this bit was coming, and he kind of had the same answer for many years, didn't he? He was like, he always said he was very proud of how it turned out, but there was just a few niggles along the way. So this is the first time that he's explicitly said that they should have put the money up and got a much better director in on the show, and that the production, like you said, said it was just a disaster, and was terrible to work in. So it's very bizarre to me to have someone's opinion on the show be that way on a series that's so good. I mean, I know there's it's not perfect, and there aren't the odd niggle, and but that's what you have with the first of anything.
Yeah, and I'm always amazed how much watching it, how much it seems they got right.
Yeah,
it doesn't. When I watch it, it feels incredibly, because I love the first series. Like you said, there's the odd bit where you think, oh, that could have been better, but you have to excuse it because they were sort of finding their feet. I'm always surprised how good the first series is when I watch it back. But it's interesting to think that behind the scenes it was just a complete and utter nightmare from the sounds of it. And I think. Like we were saying about Barrowman earlier, where he's probably reached a point where he just needs to get off his chest. I felt a bit of that listening to this interview with Chris. I feel he just needed to. I think what he's been waiting for is, because he says in the interview, have they acknowledged it now? Meaning like the producers and that. And I think the interviewer says, he says good, because, I think he's been waiting for them to sort of say, it was, we understand where Chris is coming from, in order for him to say, thank you. This is why. So it's really, really interesting.
It is, and the other thing that I found quite interesting is when you and I reviewed the episode Rose, however long ago it was, you and I both said exactly the same thing, and that was that especially that first episode and pretty much that first series, in our opinions, it was exactly what the show needed to be at the time. If you remember, we said that it needed to be not sort of too complex that new viewers couldn't jump on board and enjoy it and get into it. It needed to have a bit of fan service so that long-term fans could, pick up on things. But it also needed to be a lot more of a modern show and appeal to how TV was made, 10 years ago, however many years ago. So it's just really, it must be hard for Chris Eccleston, because he probably thinks, this could have been a million times better. If we'd have had that director, if we'd had that budget, if we'd have done it this way, if the production was better. And he also criticises his own performance a little bit, doesn't he? He goes on to say, he was, very proud of his performance, but he knew that when he was watching it back, he was saying things to himself like, when I next play the Doctor, I'm going to do that differently, or I'm going to do that differently. And his performance, he said, would have been a lot better had he have gone on to do Series 2.
That's right. He talks about the comedic parts, doesn't he? He said he wasn't known for being a comedic actor, and he was asked to do some quite sort of light-hearted stuff in Series 1, which he wasn't known for and perhaps wasn't comfortable doing. And he says if he'd gone on to do the second series, he would have, toned in on that and sort of perfected it a bit more. And, because he sees it as a craft, doesn't he? He's a very sort of... you can imagine him watching his stuff back and think, right, I need to do this, I need to do that, and perfect it. So it's just even hearing him just say, if I'd have done Series 2, it just makes me think I would have just loved to have seen how he would have developed the character. I think he said himself that he had his own, in his mind, he had his own ideas of where he wanted to go with the character of the Doctor, and I think the production team didn't agree with some of the ideas he had. There was a bit of a clash, wasn't there, on how he wanted to perform the Doctor. It would have been fascinating, I think, to see a second series of Chris, to see what he did with it. But it's really nice to hear him start to open up a bit more about his reasons why. And the more he talks about it, I think you probably feel the same. The more he talks about it, the more I start to understand.
Yes.
Because he does get a hard time sometimes for turning his back on the show. But he's good in an interview. Sometimes he can be a bit reserved, but when he's flowing like this, when he's actually just chatting and is more relaxed, he's really interesting to hear him, actually.
And the good thing is, though, it's not all bad. It's not like he's sitting there completely running the show into the ground. He does say it's the character of the Doctor is a beautiful character. And, he really loves all the other performances from David and Matt and Peter. He loves all that stuff because he appreciates how hard it is to play the Doctor in a show like that. So, it's just a shame, because he does say that he regrets not doing that second series. He does say that, he regrets that. But it is a shame, because I think he would have been, so much better in Series 2. Once, really got into it and, got some of his ideas in there, it would have been cracking.
It does make me wonder why the Moff couldn't convince him to come back for the 50th, though. Because if he had these mixed feelings, and, I think there'd been enough time between when he left and the 50th, it does make me wonder how tempted he was to do that. Because from what I understand, he wasn't really up for it much at all. Like the Moff said, he had 2 or 3 conversations with him where he really tried, and he said he sort of politely kept saying, no, I'm not really, no, so it does make me think, but,
Yeah, some actors are like that. They just, I don't know, they just lock them. It's a bit like movie fans will know that Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis, before he passed away, they tried for donkey's years to get Bill Murray to do Ghostbusters 3, and he was the reason why it never got made in the end. He was just like, no. So some actors are just like that. They get sort of not tarnished with that, but they just get that feeling like, I can't go back there. It's, I just can't do it. So maybe we should have kidnapped him and, held somebody valuable ransom.
Before we move off the story, though, one question for you. Do you think this could possibly lead on to Chris doing some Big Finish audios?
No.
Right. I see. I had a glimmer of hope. Hearing him say this stuff. I thought, oh, maybe they could get him. No, I don't think so either, but it would be nice, wouldn't it?
It would be nice. Right, some very enlightening news there.
Yeah.
Which we'd like to hear your comments on, actually. Let's get an online debate shenanigans going. Let's see what your views are on Mr. Barrowman and Mr. Eccleston. But right, we've got a couple of bits of merch, so should we get the Daleks in?
Oh yeah, get them in.
Merch corner. Merch corner. Merch corner.
I don't know whether to be impressed or disgusted.
It's a bit rubbish, but it's pretty. It's very pretty.
Talking of John Barrowman, and Captain Jack, Big Finish have announced, potentially much to his dismay, in light of recent things, that there's going to be a brand new Big Finish audio adventure called The Lives of Captain Jack, which is due out mid next year. Now, this for me is it's kind of a bittersweet. This must be a bittersweet thing for John Barrowman, because he's like, it's one of those things where we said it in the past, at various times. Thank God for Big Finish.
Yeah.
So he must be thinking that on one hand, thank God, because I'm still getting it out there. Torchwood and Captain Jack, it's still in the public's mind, and you're doing it, but it's still not the TV show.
Yeah.
But anyway, regardless, The Lives of Captain Jack, June 2017, brand new audio adventure. I'm not sure how much. I mean, there are a few guest stars, alongside John Barrow in this one, but I'm not sure how much of this is Torchwood versus just an adventure with Captain Jack.
I'm not sure either. Yeah.
So the synopsis is it's Captain Jack, an immortal adventurer with a wicked sense of everything, has led an extraordinary set of lives. We all know he travelled with the Doctor. We all know he ran Torchwood, but what else did he get up to?
I think we know the answer to that.
These 4 adventures in the full cast series from Big Finish provide some of the answers. So this is like, it feels to me like it's a filling in of the gaps. So what did Captain Jack do when he was not travelling with the Doctor and when he wasn't getting stuck into Torchwood? So it could be interesting. It could be cool, because this is like a door open to anything.
Yeah, it is. It's a good point. Yeah.
In terms of for the writers, especially where their imagination's going to go, this could go anywhere, because they're unrestricted pretty much, because they don't have to rely too heavily on, surrounding storylines. This is just Captain Jack somewhere in the universe doing something with somebody, obviously. Because he's a bit of a cad, a bit of a rogue.
Well, there's an old-fashioned word. I like that, a cad.
I'm trying not to be too crude in my descriptions of Captain Jack sometimes, but how do you feel about this, mate? A bit more of a backstory on Captain Jack, what he's been up to?
I think this is, like you say, it's quite interesting. I'm loving the look of some of the people that are in it as well. So it's also starring Russell Tovey from obviously Doctor Who and Being Human, and also one of the nicest people I've ever bumped into on the street. It's also got Camille Kaduri, who we love. We've never met her, but
Jackie
obviously plays Jackie. Yeah. I never know how to pronounce this guy's surname. Do you? Alexander Voss. Obviously, he does the Confessions of Dorian Gray for Big Finish.
Oh yeah.
So he's good. Katie Manning, she's doing a lot lately, isn't she? I was going to say she's getting around, but yeah, she's doing well. So yeah, some great people involved in it. Sounds really interesting to me. Always worries me when they say these things like, it seems so far away. June 2017 seems like, ages away, and yet it'll soon come round, which is scary. But yeah, sounds good to me. Does it say how many CDs it is?
It doesn't say how many CDs, but it's 4 stories.
4 stories, right?
Yeah,
okay.
So the first one's called The Year After I Died.
I felt really old saying CDs then, so it just makes me... CDs? What's that?
And that's set in the year 2101. On Earth, ravaged by Daleks.
Oh, Daleks. Also, Briggsy will be involved, I expect.
We see Jack struggling to save humanity. The second one's called Wednesdays for Beginners, and that's Jack and Jackie Tyler.
Oh, excellent.
Yep, they must reunite to rescue the Powell estate.
I've just been sold. Sorry.
Yeah. Third one is called One Enchanting Evening. Captain Jack and Alonzo, who we know from... he was paired up in the bar at the very end of David Tennant's story.
Oh, yeah.
They've only just met in the bar, but why did the Doctor want them to be together?
Oh, wow. This is actually sounding really good. I'm really getting into this.
Yeah. And then the final one is month 25. He's the young star of the time agency, and his whole life is about to fall apart. But that's not going to stop him winning.
Whoa. This is sounding pretty good, actually.
Yes. And one thing, because when I first heard it, I was like, I'm excited because they could go anywhere with it. But then when they link it into these characters, so Jackie Tyler and Alonzo, who was one of the, it was the, what was the David Tennant special where?
It's End of Time Part 2, isn't it?
Yeah, but what was the story before that? Was it the Titanic 2?
Oh, what's that called?
With Kylie Minogue.
Yeah, Kylie one.
Yeah, I'm sure that Alonzo was one of the crew members working on
He was.
Yes.
Yeah, he was,
and then the End of Time Part 2, he's in that bar. It's a bit like the cantina from Star Wars. All the aliens knocking about. And yeah, so when you link it in like that, and it's sort of like, it's a great new adventure, but then we also find out a little bit more. What did happen, after Jack and Alonzo met in the bar? Obviously we know what happened, but, what happened after that. So, and also Jackie's back. That's going to be a good one.
Jackie and Jack together, that would be great.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to this, Matt. I think it's going to be a really good bunch of stories for Captain Jack.
Yeah, I am now. I must admit, I hadn't really looked at the details of it until now. But yeah, I'm liking what I see here. Yeah, definitely get that one, actually. It doesn't say price yet, does it? But hopefully it'll be one of their more reasonable
probably
pre-order prices. Yeah.
Probably £20 pre-order.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. Great stuff. Okay, and in other merch news, Lethbridge Stewart, there's another free download coming available with the Havoc Files. Oh, no, actually, sorry, Havoc Files 2 is also on the way. So you've got a free download coming out and Havoc Files 2, which is a collection of all the little short stories. Now, I missed out on Havoc Files, the first one, and it goes for ridiculous prices on eBay. So I've made sure I've pre-ordered this Havoc Files 2, so I'm quite looking forward to it. But this free download you can get sounds really good, actually. It's called The Last Duty, and it's a tribute to Eileen Younghusband, who was very important part of the Women's Auxiliary Force during World War II. So that's a really nice little tie-in, and you can obviously download this for free from Candy Jar Books. Now, I must get the website right, because let me click on it, because I always pronounce it wrong. How do you say it? It's www.candy, what's that middle hyphen called?
Candy-jar.co.uk.
Yes, that's it.
I'll tell you what, those guys at Candy Jar, especially Andy Frankham-Allen and the other authors and everyone else that does the whole they are busy people.
I know, yeah.
Because it's not very often, is it, where you have a series of books, that come out in quite short succession. That these, what we're on now, book 6.
4, 5, 6, 7 so far, and then the 2 Havoc Files.
So it's 7 books so far. They've come out in quite a short space of time.
Yeah.
If you think about Game of Thrones, the guy was it George R.R. Martin? He hasn't even wrote the book that the latest series. They had to sort of make it up.
Well, he needs to pull his finger out.
Exactly, yeah. Whereas these guys, they're churning out book after book after book. And not only that, they give away these free stories as well as a download. Yeah. Plus, they've got like additional, companion little books that go with it and stuff. They really have gone beyond what you would normally see in just a standard run of books,
Yeah, I agree.
We had Andy on the show, didn't we, last year? And that was when the very first book had just come out, or it was about to come out.
Just about to come out, I think, or just come out, yeah.
Yeah, and his level of excitement, you could tell that he was really looking forward to, the stories that were coming up in the series, because I think he wrote the first 2, and then he was overseeing the rest of them from different authors, isn't it? So you could tell his excitement and stuff. But I didn't think back then when we very first spoke to him about the first book that it would grow to be this, I mean, the character Lethbridge Stewart is just, you can tell that, Doctor Who fans just adore that character still.
Yeah.
For them to really release 7 books, a couple of spin-off stories, digital downloads, it's great. It's a great time, to get stuck into books about Doctor Who at the moment. And I would say that Andy Frankham-Allen, the other authors, Candy Jar, they're sort of leading the way with fleshing out the characters and stuff like that. So I will just want to say like a huge thank you and congrats to Andy and the other people at Candy Jar, because it must be a lot of work to push this amount of content out.
Yeah, and also I know Andy's very keen on sort of sorting out little inconsistencies that have cropped up, especially in the new series. So he's unbelievably managed to sort out some of the continuity sort of errors and stuff. What I'm trying to say is there's a lot of love goes into these books. You can tell they're clearly very, very invested in the characters. Yeah. This free download, The Last Duty, it does fit in just after the Grandfather Infestation, which was book 3, I think, in the new sort of batch, if you like. So it's quite nice to keep them in, for those of us who like to keep them in chronological order. And that wasn't my Skype messing up. That's me not being able to pronounce the word. So that's quite nice as well. Havoc Files 2, just quickly mention as well, is on its way. These are very limited, so if you want it, get it now. Don't be like me crying that you missed out on it. And this is a collection of short stories, so they've just released the cover for it. And we always say, don't we? We love the covers of these books. They're just classic and really, really cool covers. Yeah,
the Havoc Files 2, the cover by Adrian Salmon just is really good. It's got a great because they've stuck to the retro sort of old school, almost Target look and feel. For these, they do look great. So it's all good stuff for Lethbridge Stewart.
I'm looking forward to that being crushed through my letterbox at whenever it comes out.
Yeah, or just hoyed over the fence and just sat in a rainy puddle.
That's right, yeah. Any day now. Yeah.
Right, so that is news and merch.
Mm-hmm.
Rightio. Adam, hold on, let me get into my high-pitched mode.
Hang on.
Yeah. Actually, he hasn't got his suit on, so he doesn't do any lapel stroking in this. Because he's got sort of Roman robe.
I think they might clutch the old robes at one point, I think, in that style.
Right, Adam. Anyway, what are we going to review this week?
This week, First Doctor adventure, The Romans.
Maximus, my dear.
Oh, my dear Caesar Nero. I have a surprise for you. Guess what it is? Well, now, let me think. You want me to play in the arena? You guessed. But it's no problem at all. After all, you want to do your very best for your fellow artists. Well, why not the arena? Yes, of course. That is exactly right. Yes, well, I promise you, I shall try to make it a roaring success. You'll have to play something special, you know. Oh, yes, of course, yes. Something serious, yes. Something that they can really get their teeth into. No, you can't. I've told no one. Caesar Nero, I've always wanted to put on a good show, to give a great performance. But after all, who knows? If I go down well, I might even make it my farewell performance. You see, I've always wanted to be considered as an artist of some taste. Generally regarded as, palatable. But I must be boring you. Oh, I must. Surely you have so many other important things to attend to without standing here, chewing over the facts with me. Good gracious, there's something burning. My plans, my drawings for the new Rome! You fool, you idiot! A lifetime's work! I'll have you both killed!
No, surely you've just accidentally played a clip from a Carry On movie, haven't you? By mistake.
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
You'd think so.
Right. The Romans. The one that Adam forgot about.
Yes.
So, this was first broadcast in January 1965.
Wow.
It's a 4-parter. It was written by Dennis Spooner and directed by Christopher Barry.
Mm-hmm.
Produced, obviously, by Verity Lambert.
Oh, wonderful.
And also by Mervyn Pinfield as well. So, the Romans. Plot is thus. The TARDIS makes a very, very wonky landing. Those of you that have seen, plenty of the early Doctor Who, like the Hartnell and Troughton stuff, they use this very lovely little model of the TARDIS. It must only be the size of a mug of tea. It's this tiny little model that hasn't got much detail on it at all. And it's, because back in the day, like sort of camera perspective and all that stuff just wasn't really where it is today, although it looks pretty well done, you can tell a mile off it's a miniature model. It looks it's funny, but it's cool. So you see the TARDIS sort of rocking off the edge of this cliff, forward and back. And the Doctor and his companions, they escape before it sort of tumbles down into the valley. And then quite surprisingly and quite randomly, we don't actually see them, out on the cliffside, or anything like that. The next time we see them, they're all in Roman robes, sort of lounging around in this lovely villa somewhere, eating grapes and drinking wine. And you think, okay, so they're obviously in Rome, hence the name, the title, sorry. And they sort of just set up camp in this villa, just...
It kind of needed a 2 weeks later caption or something, doesn't it? Because it does just sort of cut to it.
Yeah, so you see them in the TARDIS, and then you see the outside view of the TARDIS with it sort of rocking over the edge of the cliff, and then it sort of tumbles down, and then we see them all dressed up in Roman robes, lounging around. So yeah absolutely, we need a, few weeks later sort of thing. And then, so they're living their life of Riley, basically. They've got no commitment, they've got no responsibility. They're all just, wandering around the lovely gardens and eating grapes. But then the story splits off into two parts quite quickly. So we have the Doctor who is confused. Somebody confuses the Doctor for another person. So there's this old sort of important person who lives outside of Rome somewhere, and he's on his way into Rome to kill Nero. And while he's en route, he gets killed by this sort of assassin. But then the Doctor, who looks exactly like this person who is on his way to kill Nero, sort of takes up his role. And this person, everyone thinks that he's this assassin that's been sent to kill Nero. So he sort of gets drafted into this story of a sort of conspiracy. There's a guy that works, within the Roman government that, knows about this person, Maximus Petulian. The Doctor takes up his name. He knows about him going to kill Nero, so it sort of aids there, and the Doctor's completely baffled. He's like, there's a couple of times where he's, why would I kill Nero and why would I do this? He's just sort of enjoying life. And it's him and Vicky. So them two sort of pair off together. And then the other side of the story that happens quickly is Ian and Barbara. Ian gets captured, shoved into the cells, and then his story is basically Gladiator.
Yeah.
If you've seen the Russell Crowe movie Gladiator, that's basically what happens to Ian. He gets captured, gets made a slave, he escapes, he gets locked up again. Then he finds out that he's going to get thrown into the arena to compete for his life and all the rest of it. So he's basically Gladiator. And then Barbara, she gets enslaved, and she has to, she's one of the one of the royal ladies, or the royal girls who are just there to serve the emperor and so on. And it's funny because in this story, the two of them never coincide throughout the entire story.
No,
they don't. So what they get split up at the beginning. So the Doctor and Vicky, they go off. He gets then sort of caught up in that whole whirlwind of people mistaking him for somebody else, like this elaborate musician that plays in front of the Caesar, but really he's there to kill him. But the Doctor doesn't know any of that. He just gets sort of taken away with it all. And then Barbara and Ian, they get captured, enslaved, and they're trying to escape at every turn. And then right at the end, very comically, they're all back in the villa, and the Doctor comes in and just assumes that they've been lounging around for 2 weeks. Yeah. Still eating grapes and drinking wine, and then, and then they're off.
The whole place burns down.
Yes. So that's one thing. It's one of those kind of educational stories from early Doctor Who. It's based... It's based loosely,
very thinly.
Yeah, it's very loosely based on the Caesar Nero and his very publicly sort of mental health issues. He's a bit nutty, isn't he, Nero? He's a crazy, he's basically insane. And his master plan is to burn down all of Rome so that he can rebuild it to be a better Rome.
Yes.
And which the Doctor causes, So this is, we'll come on to that in a little while, but, essentially the Doctor's responsible for, all of Rome burning down, which he very quickly disputes and then turns around. But that's the Romans in a nutshell. In a nutshell. It sounds confusing, probably the way I've described it is confusing, but it isn't really. You just have to follow the two parallel stories, because they don't intertwine. There's a couple of times where they very almost, you think they're going to bump into each other, but they don't. So it's a story of two halves. I keep thinking,
oh, come on. They never quite meet, do they? Never the twain should meet.
No. It's a story of two halves for sure. So what do you reckon, buddy?
I said I couldn't remember this story. Couldn't ever remember seeing it. Now I know why. No, actually, it's not too bad. It's got some nice little moments in there. Hartnell just seems to be having an absolute ball in it. He seems to be loving this story. I was okay till I got to episode 3. I'll be honest. Maybe I shouldn't have watched it all in one go, but I found it a bit hard going. I think the first 2 episodes are right, but episode 3 just turns into this farce where Barbara's being chased around a stone table for nearly the entire episode by this sort of carry-on character. And I was just thinking, oh, for goodness sake. Mm-hmm. And then it kind of wraps up, and I don't know. It's not up there with the best. Let's put it that way. But it's certainly not the worst. It's quite an easy enough watch, I think. Mainly because of Hartnell. He's just he's just so funny in it. So yeah, it's all right. It's not. It's enjoyable enough, I thought. Yeah. But it's also not great. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
It's not bad. It's not bad. It's like you said, it's certainly not up there with one of the any of the best sort of Hartnell stories. But Hartnell's having the time of his life.
He seems to be loving it.
If anyone's any of our listeners who have seen this, you probably agree with that. And if you haven't seen it, and then you go to watch this one, you would think that Hartnell's just had several brandies before shooting this, because he's just loving it. He's in a great mood throughout pretty much the entire story.
He really is. Yeah.
You've heard us say before when we've reviewed Hartnell stories that we love the way that Hartnell portrayed the Doctor with this sort of lovable old, sort of wise old granddad sort of thing. He's a bit grouchy now and then. He's a bit grumpy. He can snap at you at times and stuff like this. But you don't get any of that really in this story, do you? He's on cloud 9.
He's on. Yeah, it's a very, very light-hearted story. It's the tone of it is quite unusual. I am surprised. I genuinely did forget this story, because even watching it again yesterday or day before, whenever it was, it struck me that it was like watching, like I'd never seen it, and I must have watched it before. So I was actually in many ways quite enjoying it. It was almost like watching it for the first time. And Hartnell it's very different in terms of his characters, and he's normally very grumpy and touchy. In this, he's almost laughing and joking every 2 minutes, and he even gets into a fight, and he's absolutely loving it, isn't he? He's like, "Oh, I'll show you." He's throwing the guy around the room, and I was thinking, this is not the Doctor. What is going on here? But there are some moments when he slips back into, just every now and again, you get a split second of him turning. It's like, "Don't be silly, child. Now come along." And then he goes back to this very light-hearted Doctor. And do you know what? It made for quite a refreshing change in that respect. It was really good to see Hartnell just having fun. And it's interesting.
That's the thing. It's definitely a change of pace.
Definitely. Yeah, the pace is strange. Yeah.
It's almost like they sat down and said, right, we've had a lot of requests. It's almost like a radio station. Can you play this song? So we've had loads of requests for, Hartnell to be a bit more funny. So let's do a bit of a wacky story, and just see how it goes. And I think you read a quote to me, didn't you, from where was it, last week, and like audience reception.
Oh, they did because they used to do sort of this sort of thing back in the day. Hang on, I'll find it for you. It was a test audience, wasn't it? BBC test audience at the time gave gave a strong negative reaction when being shown this, and to quote, they called it so ridiculous that it's a bore. This shows at the time, and suitable only for morons was the feedback they got from the test audience at the time. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't say. I think that's a little harsh. I have to say, although I don't think it's great, I don't think it's that bad. And I kind of applaud it for trying to do something different, which is something Doctor Who does even to this day. You know, we try and think, how can we keep the show fresh? How can we do something just a little bit out there? And I think that's what they were trying to do with this. They thought, right, let's just do something a little bit different we haven't done before. And although it doesn't really work, it works enough to make it watchable.
Yeah. And that's interesting as well, because what they did back in the day, it was like, right, let's try this. And this clearly didn't work that well, because from this moment on, we don't really get that carry-on vibe. You know, that strange, wacky, you know, almost slapstick humour in any of the others. So what they've done is they've done it, and they've like, right, it's, you know, the test stuff wasn't great, but, you know, sod them, we're going to put it out anyway. It goes out, gets really good reviews in the papers and stuff, but it doesn't really blow their socks off in terms of audience reception. You know, it just does fairly well. So they're like, okay, we've done that. You know, now let's get back on track with what we were doing originally with this plan for the Doctor and his character and so on. You don't see that really these days, do you? Especially with the Moff, you know, because what will happen is he'll write a Capaldi episode and, somebody will write a Capaldi episode and he'll produce it and then they'll put it out. And then it seems like the majority of Doctor Who fandom completely hate it. And it gets badly reviewed and all the rest of it. And he's like, let's just do that again. You know, let's
have Sleep No More Part 2.
Yeah, let's just go down this road again, because we know that everyone hated it. We know that it got bad reviews. We know that even the people who were making the show didn't like it, but let's do it again.
It's called being stubborn.
Yeah, so they didn't have that back then. It was like, right, we've tried it, we've done it. It did okay, but let's just get back on to what we, you know. So I sort of picked up on that. When I finished watching part 4, I was like, that would not happen at the minute. You know, it would just, you know, that we've seen in Series 9. It's just, let's just carry on, you know. Yeah, you're going to like it one way or the other. You will like this, yeah.
I'm going to show you how wrong you are. Because, I mean, this is early days. This is the second series of Doctor Who we're into now, isn't it?
That's right. Yep.
This would have been Series 2. So, yeah, still sort of relatively early days, I guess, in that sense. Yeah, and Vic is a newish companion as well. I think this is only a second story, so this is why I wanted to go back and watch The Rescue, because I wanted to see how she was introduced. Because again, I can't really remember these two stories at all. So she's quite new in it, I think, and Hartnell seems to take to her almost straight away, doesn't he? He seems to work quite well with her. Actually, I wouldn't necessarily know it's her second story from this.
No, it's I can't remember how did Vicky get into the?
She's sort of I think everyone on the planet that they're on dies, and she's so the Doctor kind of takes her under her wing. I think, as I say, I need to go back and rewatch The Rescue. I might do it this afternoon if I get time.
That's right. Yeah, she and she helps Barbara, doesn't she?
Yeah,
I think Barbara's like in a bad way in that story. And Vicky finds her and helps her out, and it's a strange. I find this quite a strange sort of team of companions. This one, because when you had Ian and Barbara with the Doctor and
Susan,
that was quite a good dynamic, I thought, because of Susan's relation to the Doctor.
Yeah,
you know, and when we go back to when we get into another 4-piece with Vicky and Ian and Barbara. I always get the feeling that Vicky just feels like a spare part.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's almost like they thought, we need to fill that gap. But I do know what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely. It's like, well, you know, Susan, you know, did very well. You know, we had some great stories as that dynamic. So let's try and fill that with somebody. And it just feels like she's in there for the sake of being in there. Because she doesn't really do a huge amount, does she? She sort of follows the Doctor around and...
Actually, she gets hardly anything to do in this story, does she? I'm just thinking now. I can't think of anything she does do. She kind of follows the Doctor around.
The only one thing she does is she swaps the Emperor's sort of wines over to try and poison him.
Oh, yeah, and ends up poisoning that other poor bloke.
Yeah, so when she's in that room and she's being shown around by the chemist woman.
Oh, yeah.
sort of alchemist woman, you know, mixing all the potions and stuff. She's sort of like, oh, I've got a plan here. But that's all she really does, you know. It's she just sort of follows the Doctor around, doesn't really do much. So it's a bit of a spare part, in my opinion. But
yeah, that is true. The only good thing is that the scenes with her and the Doctor are really sweet. That's the only thing I would say. That's what I mean when I said they gel together. The scenes between her and Hartnell are really nice. But yeah, they don't do anything in terms of moving the story on or giving her anything to do. That is true. Yeah.
Yeah. Right, so sort of story elements and so on. The story as a whole, like we've said, it's kind of educational. It's set, you know, in the right period of Rome. It has got, you know, sort of real characters. So Caesar, Nero, and, you know, he was a real Caesar who was insane and all that stuff. And Rome did burn to the ground and it was rebuilt. So it's just they've sort of injected sort of some, you know, a sort of funny way about getting there, if that makes sense. So, you know, the whole reason why Rome did burn to the ground is because the Doctor inadvertently, you know, burnt all of the maps and plans for the new Rome, because he's standing there in that clip that we played before we started. That's when the Doctor's standing there and his glasses are magnifying the sun onto the map and it burns. And when Nero sees all of those plans, you know, going up in, you know, that gives him the idea, you know, I'm just going to burn all of Rome to the ground and, you know, I have no choice but to rebuild it. So the Doctor's sort of responsible, if you like. And Vicky actually says to him when they're out in the countryside looking across and they see Rome in flames, you know, she's like, this is, you know, people have read about this in books for thousands of years and I'm here watching it. And, you know, and the Doctor's like, yes, you know, he's all sort of proud of his history. He's like, you know, the Great Fire and all the rest of it. And she's like, yeah, that you created, sort of thing. And he's like, I did not. I had nothing. So
that's what I mean about those. An example of those great little scenes between the two of them. Hartnell, I did not.
Yeah. And she's like, you know, we'll agree to disagree, and walks off. And he's like, nope, we'll settle this now. And then he sort of has this realization over his face, like, oh yeah, maybe I did. And then he sort of starts giggling as he walks off. He's laughing. He's like, yes, I've just, you know, potentially burned thousands of people to their death while Rome's just, you know, in cinders. But, you know, it's a good day. It's a good day to be the Doctor. It's that kind of...
Yeah.
So it is educational. It is educational to a degree. You know, there are, you know, historical stuff in there that did actually happen. It's just intertwined with some comedic storytelling is the best way I can describe it.
Yeah, it's got some serious ideas going on in there, like the slavery and things like that. Quite dark sort of storyline mixed with some very comical slapstick. It's a real strange dynamic, I think, in this story. But it just about works. I think it just about pulls it off.
I think
you know?
Yeah, just about.
I'm just wondering. I did find myself laughing a lot, but I don't know if it was actually at the humour or whether I was just laughing at sort of like, you know, some of it was quite bad. I don't know if I was necessarily always laughing for the right reasons at it. I have to say that, but yeah, some of the humour in here is quite funny. It is nice to see the TARDIS team just relaxing. I did think that, you know, like you said, how it cuts to them just like lounging around eating some weird food. What do they have? They have some really weird stuff, and the Doctor's like, "Oh, Barbara," tells her off, doesn't he? She's like ants, boiled ants or something. I don't know. They're eating all sorts of weird stuff.
Yeah.
But it is quite nice just to see them land and, you know, and setting up camp and you know, having a nice relaxing time. I think one of the things that does let this story down for me is the cliffhangers. I actually thought, because I was pretty sort of engrossed in the story. I did sort of now and again check the phone, but mainly episode 3. But the cliffhangers, when like the first cliffhanger as well, I thought I'd missed something. I was like, that can't be the cliffhanger. It just ended. Yep. Like the cliffhangers are really weak in this story. So I am surprised that the viewers came back the following week, because there's no sense of danger really at all in any of the cliffhangers. I don't think the worst sort of bit of danger is poor old Barbara being chased by that lech. That's the most sort of disturbing thing in the story, I think. Nero,
he's
yeah.
after her, yeah. He takes
I
a
know,
shine.
that's horrible. I feel really sorry for her.
It's the old Babs, doesn't he?
Yeah. But apart from that, the cliffhangers are weak as dishwater.
Yeah, they're not what we're used to seeing in... Because we like a good cliffhanger. And typically, classic Who is littered with them.
But I think perhaps the direction's a little bit to blame, because when episode 2 kicks off, the guy lunges towards the Doctor with a knife, and I thought, well, that's where they should have had the cliffhanger, not when he's just about to walk through a curtain, if you know what I mean. So maybe it's down to the direction more than anything with the cliffhangers.
Yeah, it is a shame actually, because that can really help you along. If you're struggling with a classic Who, and especially if it's 4 parts or more, and you're sort of struggling a little bit, they can sort of help pick you up a little bit. So at the end, you're like, what's or even if you've seen it before, it's quite good, because it's like, this is a great ending. Let's crack on with the next part. But these ones, they are dull, aren't they? Nothing really happens.
Thank goodness it's only a 4-parter, because if it had been a 6-parter, this would have struggled big time.
Yeah.
As I said, episode 3 is pretty weak, actually. I think the first 2 are okay. They're enough to sort of make you go on to the next episode. But yeah, I could have quite easily sort of had a break after episode 3 before going into 4. Yeah.
Indeedy. So yeah, it's the direction. Yeah, the direction was a little bit.
It's Christopher Barry, isn't it? Who's done quite a lot on Doctor Who over the years.
Yeah.
Nothing very exciting going on with the direction, I have to say.
No, it was a little bit flat throughout. I think that's because it's predominantly all set based, wasn't it?
It's all set, yeah.
Yeah, so they're just sort of walking from one side of the set to the other, having a conversation as they go. And the only times that we really got any sort of direction as such, out of the norm, I would say, would be the scenes on the boat, where Ian is with all the other slaves and they're rowing off somewhere. That looks quite good. And also the scene. Even like the slapstick, like the comedy thing where Nero's chasing Barbara and they're sort of going, he's sort of behind this door and then out the other one, and she runs around the little table and he falls over. That's okay. But even then, it's still a little bit, it's just the camera following somebody quite statically. There's no, dynamic, nice camera sweeps or zooms in or anything like that. It's just like it's almost like someone's there with a home video recorder, and it's like a found footage thing. It's like, there you go, that'll do.
Yeah,
So
I know the cameras were very heavy back then, but yeah, there's no spark to the direction, I have to say, in this one.
Yeah, sorry, Christopher.
Sorry.
Yes. And so, in terms of the educational stuff aside, in terms of just a Doctor Who story, it's pretty good, I would say. It's just, as a story in Doctor Who, it's nothing groundbreaking, but at the same time, it's quite entertaining. I don't mean the humour side of it. I mean, it's quite, because we have these 2 stories running parallel with each other. It is quite, you do think to yourself, where does this lead to? Do they meet up halfway through and then sort of battle through? But I like that they kept those 2 things separate right until the end.
Yeah,
because it's almost like a bit of a soap opera mentality. You've got this sort of bunch of stuff happening, but it's also, linked, entirely to the other story, the other bunch of stuff happening, and they sort of go back and forward between the 2. So it's not too bad in terms of story.
No, there's enough going on to keep it afloat. Yeah,
just about enough going on.
Yeah, I was going to say just about. What is going on with that scene with the harp, though? I honestly thought there was a fault with my DVD when the Doctor starts playing the harp and there's no sound, because it goes on for ages. And I was thinking, is the audio track gone? What's happened? Because what's meant to be happening is there's some sort of reference to the Emperor's New Clothes, isn't there, or something? He's pretending to play the harp, and people are pretending to love it, but he's not actually playing it. But I really didn't understand that scene at all.
Yeah, so it's basically a trick from the... So he can't play
How do they know how to play along with the trick? Has he been round and told them all, or what?
Well, the Doctor's just very educated on, like, the social, side of things,
right.
around it. So he basically tricks them to say... Because before he starts playing, he says something like, only people with a keen ear for something will be able to hear, like, the lovely melodies or something. So he pretends to play it, and because you're in like the presence of the Emperor and you're obviously quite important, you don't want to look like an idiot in front of everybody, so you just pretend you're like, oh yeah, sounds really good, and then you whisper to someone else, this is very good, yeah, this is very good. Just because all of you don't want to lose face, you don't want to be the one person who can't hear the good music.
But it is funny how cross Nero gets. I mean, that did make me laugh. He's like, oh, you, damn you, Doctor.
Yeah, he's like, he was sort of pulled out of a Flash Gordon.
Isn't he actually? Is he actually a carry-on actor? What's his name?
Derek Francis. Yeah,
Francis.
I'm not sure.
I've seen him in something like that. Oh wow, he is. He's in Carry On Loving and Carry On Doctor. He is in a few Carry Ons, but he looks a lot younger in this. That's probably because I thought he looked familiar.
He's in most of them.
Gosh, he's in loads of Carry Ons.
Carry On Abroad.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah.
That does make sense now, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's definitely a comedic actor because even when he's trying to be serious, he's got this face, isn't he, where he's doing like a sort of, even when he's doing a frown, he's doing like a comedy frown. Yeah,
he's doing that.
Yeah.
Patron.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, there's, like we said, there's enough to keep you going. It's sort of intermingled with, this kind of humor that you just haven't seen on. I mean, if you were watching this, in 1965, you would have absolutely thought, well, this is very different. I've never seen this in Doctor Who yet. This sort of Carry On vibe. But fortunately, it's not all the way through. There are just sort of pockets of it in sort of 2 or 3 moments in each episode where it's like, wow, that's very Carry On. But then the rest of it is quite serious, because let's not forget that, Ian's life is in mortal danger.
From a lion.
Yeah, well, through most of the episode,
From a stock footage lion, yeah. Oh, yeah, well, and that, yeah.
And then Barbara, she's enslaved as well. She's going to end up just being, Nero's little plaything by the look of it. So there not
if Nero's wife has anything to do with it. She's not very happy.
No, the wife is not her indoors. No. She's got a face like a slapped bum, isn't she?
Yeah, she don't like Barbara.
Right. So there are some serious elements to it, because you do think like, because there was a point where I thought about the Doctor. I thought, are you going to pull your finger out? Because if you don't do something soon, Barbara's just going to end up, a complete mess from being, interfered with by Nero, by the look of it. And Ian's going to get bumped off. But the whole time he's just wandering around, giggling away to himself, just pretending to play instruments and just getting himself involved in all sorts. So I did think to myself, are you actually going to do anything? Because you're meant to be like the guy. You're meant to be the one that's going to save everybody.
See, I thought Chesterton would, because quite often Chesterton steps up and takes that sort of heroic role in the show, doesn't he? Whereas the Doctor tends to just sort of meddle in things. But it's nice to see them in different costumes, I have to say. That, again, that sort of makes it more interesting, seeing them all dressed up in this Roman get-up. Especially Hartnell looks fantastic in his robe and all that. And Ian gets his hair done. In a Roman style, which is fun. So it's nice to see them, in a different costume.
The costumes were great, actually. The scene at the beginning, at the end, when they're in their little sort of holiday villa.
Yeah,
they look great in there. All the the proper Roman robes, everything. They look really good.
Technically squatters, but
technically, intruders, and then like various points throughout the episode, you think, well, that looks authentically, Roman. That looks really good. And the sets were quite good as well. The opening set when they're walking through the market at the beginning, that looks really good.
Yeah, I have to say I quite like the stool, the lady on the stool, actually, for considering she's in such a small part. The one that keeps asking for more money to give information.
Yes,
she's really cool. She's really good little character. She is, like, in terms of her acting, I liked her little performance. She stood out to me, considering she's only in that little bit.
Yeah, she was good.
She's very subtle, not over the top.
Yeah, she's played by Margot Thomas. She only had a little part, but she was good, And her face, like at the end where during that conversation, she sort of, it's the Centurion guy, isn't it? He's like probing her for information, and she sort of stops at intervals and holds her hand out. She's like, well, I need a bit more if I'm going to release that.
Gives him half a sentence and then just holds out her hand. I love that.
And at the end, she holds her hand out, for that last coin, And he's just like, ah. And she sort of had this miserable frown on her and walks away like, I could have got an extra one there.
Yeah.
There's a great little scenes like that, actually. Some great stuff. But the like the set as they were walking through the market, it wasn't very big, but, it looked good on screen.
Yeah, no, the sets are all fairly good in this. Pretty decent.
They were good. The outside sets were a bit meh. Basically, it was just a bush.
Oh well, that's There's a bush, and you can see the flat screen at the back. You can see like the creases in the cover. But then again, I suppose back in the day you wouldn't have seen that on your little TVs, but now in DVD you can see all the crinkles and the cloth and all that.
That's it. Yeah, your little 12-inch CRT tube.
You wouldn't
TV in black and white. You wouldn't notice, would you? No.
But that poor old guy gets bumped off at the beginning, and then the doctor finds him, just nicks his harp and walks off. You got to feel a little bit sorry for him.
Yeah, well, that's the guy who is actually the assassin who was on his way to kill Nero. That was Maximus Petulian, and it's the Roman soldiers find the doctor near the scene, don't they? And he just goes with it. He just assumes that person's persona and is just off, and that's how he gets into the story, pretty much, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he just, away he goes. And he just doesn't stop giggling and laughing from that point on. Yeah. Are there any scenes that stood out to you in this? Or any, because there wasn't really any sort of scenes really that stood out. Even I was looking forward to the fight scene with Ian and his mate. He gets enslaved with this guy that he makes friends with, and they sort of hatch a plan to escape off the boat and so on.
Oh, yeah. Oh, dear.
And it comes, I think it's episode 3 or the beginning of episode 4. They get told that they're going to be thrown into the arena, which is basically the arena, which is just sort of, half a very small room with some sand sprinkled over the floor. Bless them. They get told that they have to fight each other to the death, don't they? And I thought, right, this could be a good tear-up, because we've seen Ian get into a couple of good scraps, haven't we?
Always good in a scrap.
Yeah, so I thought that was going to be a good tear-up, but it was just like sort of to and fro. Hit his shield. I must admit, I never look forward to a fight scene in 60s Doctor Who. I have to say, considering Hartnell did his own fight scene. That was great.
It was so funny. Not intentionally, but it's just so funny seeing Hartnell throwing this bloke around the room. But yeah, fight scenes in Doctor Who in the 60s, not normally great. I can't think of many that stand up test of time, and that one with Ian is certainly not one of the best.
I would say that the fight scene with the Doctor was better. Yeah it is. Because he goes for it, for an old chap.
Well, I can't think of many fight scenes with Hartnell. I think perhaps when he read that in the script, his little face probably lit up. He's like, got a fight scene this week, I'm going to go for it, because they don't give him a stunt double or anything. He does it all himself.
Oh, he does. And sort of the guy sort of lunges towards him, and he sort of sidesteps nice and quick, and then he throws the blanket over him, and he pushes him over, and he's up
the window.
Yeah, he's up for it, isn't he, as well? Because I think when he's fighting him, he says something to him. He says, what does he say? He's like, "Come on,
come and have a go if you think you're hard enough."
Yeah, he's got that
pretty much.
He's got the banter going on, hasn't he?
Yeah, that is what I love about this. Actually, so much banter from the Doctor in it. It really does help to bring the episode up, I think.
Yeah. Top bants.
From
Hartnell. Yeah. Let's talk about some characters in this.
Yeah.
So we have some very small characters listed throughout. We have the Centurion soldiers who don't really.
Is it these two guys at the beginning, you mean?
Yeah, they sort of wander around the market, and
what happens to them? Because I thought they were going to be important to the story, but they kind of fizzle out after episode 2, don't they?
Yeah, they have a couple of conversations with Nero, and then they go off to do something. You don't really see them after that.
I think because I thought one of them was going to be like a villain from the way he was acting. He seemed like he was going for that sort of I'm the main villain in this, but he's not, is he? Neither of them are, actually.
No, not really.
No.
Then we have the lady on the store. She was quite good at the beginning.
She's good. Yeah, I like her.
We have the other lady who we see mixing up all the poisons and potions, and she gets there was that scene where the Emperor's wife. So basically, the Emperor's wife has said, I want you to kill this Barbara woman. with the poison, and it's Vicky that that susses it out, and she swaps them round so that it would be Nero that drinks it. But because that happened, she sort of storms in and she's like, I won't tolerate failure and all that lot. And there's a bit where she shoves her towards the two guards that come into the doorway, and she properly she falls to the floor. Yeah, she properly throws this woman. But she was quite good. I felt for her. Yeah. And then we have, there's loads of other people. There's characters who are called Lacusta, Ascarius, Didius, Sevacria, and Delos. I have no idea who they were in the story.
Me either, actually. I was just thinking that when you were saying it, I was thinking, God, I hope we're not going to ask you about them because I don't remember them. They must be just sort of minor. Oh, they're probably like, there was the guy on the boat, wasn't there, who gets a bit, it's probably one of them's him. The guy that Ian tries to trick.
Yeah, I can't remember his name in it, though.
No,
was it
he's
Delos?
Probably one of those.
Might be Delos. But the other ones, I think they're just a very small speaking parts. I can't really remember their importance within the story, I'm afraid.
No.
Then we have a guy called Tavius. And he's the guy that's sort of embedded within sort of the government. He like sort of works for Nero. He's in the parliament sort of thing.
Oh,
and
that's
he's
right,
the guy that's in cahoots with the original Maximus Betulian, the guy that's coming to Rome to kill Nero. Them two sort of had that plan together. So he's the one that, he says to the doctor, he's got plans to do X, Y, and Z, so you need to get a move on and kill him now, kill him soon. And that's when the doctor's like, kill him? Why on earth would I do that? He doesn't get it. He sort of half rolls with it. He's like, okay, I'll sort it out. But Tavius is unaware. He thinks that is the proper Maximus Betulian.
Yeah.
And he takes a liking to Barbara as well a little bit, doesn't he? He sort of helps her out.
That's right.
Yeah, because I think it's him or the house that he lives in. They purchase Barbara as a slave, don't they?
Yeah, that's right.
And then he sort of helps her out a little bit, and so he's quite a good character. Yeah, poor old old Babs, old Babsy. Yeah, and Nero, the emperor. Actually, no. Let's talk about his wife first.
Cool. Old sour face.
Yeah, she's Sabina, Papoea Sabina. It was her character name. She's played by Kay Patrick, and she played the jealous, miserable wife pretty well.
Yeah, she did.
I would say.
Yeah. I believed her.
It was almost like she had a ruck with her real husband before she left. Yeah, or the night before. So when she got there, you could tell that she's not in the mood for playing wifey.
Yeah.
Which is great because I think that's exactly how she was written. She was basically aware that as the emperor, he had like his little fluses knocking about, that he could, do what he wanted when he wanted. And she was just sort of the wife that had to look like the happy, proud emperor's wife to the public and stuff. Yeah. But in reality, she was miffed, especially when Barbara turned up. She was like, no.
Looks could kill. Looks could kill.
Yeah, she'd be stabbed twice, wouldn't she? And it's not really Barbara's fault. You feel really sorry for Barbara in this one.
You do. I was going to say she gets a rough deal.
Yeah, because it's not like she's all flirty with Nero and all over him. She's basically
it's the opposite. She can't wait to get away from him.
Exactly. Yeah, she looks petrified and doesn't want to be there. But no, his missus, she's like, "I'll have you.
I've got your number.
I've got your number." Yeah. So she was good, and then Nero himself, the carry-on guy.
I actually thought he was quite good. I actually quite liked Derek Francis as Nero. He, considering in the Carry On films, he probably turns out to 11. I think in this he did manage to sort of keep it serious and comedy at the same time. I thought he was all right. I actually quite like his performance in this. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the thing is I imagine that when he got the script and he read through it, and when he was talking through it with the people who are making it, the director especially, he probably had a bit of a get out of jail free card because it's well documented that Nero was a complete just mentalist. He was actually, if he, alive today, he would be clinically insane.
Yeah.
He was just off his head completely. So although he does dial it up, from time to time, and he does go a bit wacky, and, he's probably like, well, that's maybe how Nero would have been. He would have been like a sort of semi-schizophrenic, all over the place, you know, a bit of a nut job.
Yeah.
So he probably is like, well, I can play it however I want then, because, you know, it was documented that this guy was insane, but, you know, exactly how he was day to day, I'll do it how I want. So if I want to go really funny and wacky, I'll do that. If I want to be, you know, a bit more somber, then I'll do that as well. So he probably just did it how he wanted.
He has got one of those faces, isn't he, that you kind of expect him to sort of break out into misses any minute.
Yeah.
He just keeps sort of pulling those sort of faces. I do love that. I mean, I feel sorry for Barbara being chased around the room by him all the time, but I do like the scenes of him and Hartnell as well. I like the way he plays the whole jealousy thing. That Hartnell's getting that reaction. You know, they're quite funny. So yeah, I thought he was quite good in it.
Yeah,
quite liked him.
And he reads Hartnell very well throughout the story as well. So although Hartnell's playing like he's not purposely playing it like he doesn't know what's going on, because he genuinely doesn't. He doesn't know why. You know, he's just sort of going along with everybody telling him he's, you know, Petulian, and he's just going with it. Nero's getting more and more and more annoyed with him, isn't he? Because he's winning over the crowd. He's making everyone happy and cheery, and then when he goes to tell him, you're going to be performing in the arena, and Hartnell's just going with it. He's like, yeah, fine, I'll do it.
Sure.
Yeah, you know, something for them to get their teeth into. He's like, he's outsmarted me again. I can't have it. So that's good to see. Like, you know, the banter between those two.
Yeah, I love that. I love the scenes between the two of them. Yeah,
it's cool. And then TARDIS peeps.
TARDIS team.
Yeah, Vicky. She, like we said earlier, a wee bit of a spare part job.
Yeah, but I think I still quite like her in it, actually. Yeah, I think she's quite good in it, but she doesn't get anything to do. So, yeah, I think she's nice in the scene she's in, but just inconsequential. She doesn't get to do anything.
Yeah, she's quite sweet. Yeah, but
she's just not, sweet. Yeah.
Ian and Babs.
Wow, now. I love these two characters. I love Barbara and Ian. I thought Ian's pretty standard. You know, you get what you normally get from Ian in this. I thought, you know, it's very good. Barbara, though, I thought was a bit under par.
Yeah.
Because I normally really like Barbara. She doesn't seem to be giving it her all in this story. You know, like it's almost like the complete opposite to Hartnell. Hartnell seems to be reveling in it and loving every line, even when he fluffs them. He just seems to be just loving the story. Barbara, to me, and probably quite understandably considering what she has to do in it, she just didn't seem to be.
Yeah.
Didn't seem to be the Barbara that we have in other stories. She's not as good as she normally is. I just thought her performance was just a little bit flat.
Yeah, I was going to say exactly the same thing, pretty much. Ian is as you would expect Ian to be. You know, what you expect from his character. He doesn't
Barbara
disappoint.
Seems bored.
Yeah, whereas Barbara, she's just more. She just doesn't seem like she's cooking on gas on this one. She's almost like she's, just turned up, sort of read it and can't wait to go home.
Yeah, I was just trying to see what I wrote. In my notes, I just put Jacqueline Hill not on top form.
Yeah.
That's the only way I can describe it. She just doesn't seem to be that on top of things in this somehow. Yeah.
I mean, she's not terrible.
No.
By any stretch, but she's, in comparison to how we've seen her in some other stories, even up to this point, you know, she's just not quite. Maybe it's just a comparison between the Doctor and these two, because he's so. Let's talk about the Doctor, because he's like, this is a very unusual story for his performance. You know, you rarely see stories where the Doctor is sort of playing that almost childish, very free spirited, not giving a damn about much. Just, you know,
very confident,
and just giggling and laughing all the time and absolutely having a ball. You have little tiny nuggets of that in other stories with Hartnell, but in this story, he's like it pretty much from start to finish, isn't he? He's just loving it.
I love Hartnell in this. To be honest with you, he saves the story for me. Yeah, whenever he's on screen, I'm just, it's just pure gold. Especially there's a bit where he goes, "Fabulous, absolutely fabulous," he goes, and I'm like, who is this? You know, I love Hartnell in the story. He clearly is enjoying it. because it just comes out on screen. He's funny. We get this bit of Tetchy Doctor just every now and again. I just loved him in it. I loved every minute that he's on screen. I just loved it.
Absolutely. And when I was thinking about a score for this one, I was thinking, what am I going to give it? And every time I thought to myself, right, so what would I take points away from, and what would I? And every time that I was thinking about the score, it was just Hartnell that was coming into my head.
Absolutely.
It was like, he's bringing the score up for me on this
Big
one
time.
because he just saves it.
Yeah.
Not the entire story,
because
because there are some good elements in it, but I think if he wasn't if he was playing the Doctor as we would normally expect him to play it, that sort of grumpy, tetchy, I think the story would have suffered.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been as good a watch as it was.
No, definitely not, because there is a lot of time in the 4 episodes when it does get a bit dull.
Mm-hmm.
This is, as I said, this is by far a great story. There's a lot of time when it's like, oh god, look at your phone time. But whenever Hartnell's on screen, there's none of that. He's brilliant in it. He's just absolutely electric. Yeah,
he's great. And music, not really much music at all in it, is there really?
Well, there's the music in it actually adds to the comedy, doesn't it? I think whenever we get a bit of music, it tends to be a sort of almost like a comedy sting. Sort of, like when the guy gets thrown out the window. I think we get one of those. So yeah, it's okay. The music, I think it suits the story.
Yeah, there's just not much of it. It's just every now and then you get like you said, this little sort of comedic thing.
Yeah.
You might, so you heard it in the clip that we played earlier when Nero realizes the plans are burning. It's just, instead of like this sort of suspenseful music because he's about to, either wallop the Doctor or go mad, it's just this funny sort of comedic bit of music and it's all kicking off. But yes. Okay. Anything else you want to say before we jump onto the scoreboard?
No, I'm intrigued to see what you score this, because I found it very hard to score it, to be honest with you. A bit like, I think you were saying this, weren't you? It's because I love Hartnell in it, and that does bring the score up. But I did struggle to score this one, I'll be honest.
Yeah, me too.
Whose turn is it first?
I think it's me.
Okay, good.
I believe, right. Yeah, good. Right, so...
Because I'm really interested to see what you score it. Go on.
I am going to go in with a 6.
Gasp. 6?
Yep.
Wow. Bit higher than I was expecting, I'll be honest. Bit higher than I was expecting that one. Yeah.
Go on, yours is quite a bit lower, isn't it?
Well, I'll tell you what, for a while the score was around 4 for me, but it went, by the end of it, I've gone for a 5.
That's not too much. Okay.
5 out of 10, because I kind of felt it was a middle of the road. It wasn't great, wasn't bad. It was just sort of middle of the road, quite enjoyable.
Yeah.
Hartnell, like you said, great in it. So, but yeah, I couldn't really go too high with it. So I sort of went in the middle, 5. Okay,
yeah. I was hovering around. Actually, after I first watched episode 1, I was like, well, this is a 4. This is a 4.5. But at the end of the story, I was just so just loving watching Hartnell. I couldn't. It was almost a little part of me almost wished that he was like that in other episodes. But then when I gave it another thought, I was like, no, because that would have ruined those stories. But he was such a good. He had such a good performance in this. He gave just cracking. He was just loving it, and it's just infectious because then you want to, watch more of him like that. So,
yeah, that's true, and also I like it for being different. It does surprise me that it didn't stick in my mind before. Like I had genuinely forgotten this story completely. So it's definitely one that will stick in my mind now. I've rewatched it because it is different, and it has got some lovely little elements to it that bring it up in the score. So yeah, not the best story, but an interesting one. Yeah, and definitely one that I could put on again and watch, thanks to Hartnell. Yeah.
What did you guys think?
Oh yeah, what do our listeners think?
We had one audio clip in, so I'm going to play that in a bit. First of all, let's jump onto Facebook. Sammy Satine. Our Sammy. She says,
Sammy.
What have the Romans ever done for us? Given us the opportunity to watch this episode, I guess plus the sanitation and the aqueduct, etc. So the Doctor arrives in ancient Rome and gets mistaken for a musician whom the Emperor wants to have killed. Vicky gets to play servant, and Ian and Barbara get kidnapped by slave traders. Ian gets enslaved to row a large boat, whilst Barbara gets bought by royalty and brought to the palace, and the Doctor nearly gets executed. It's not bad as the story goes, and I enjoy it, but I always feel like I'm waiting for the Doctor to rescue everyone. I forget that the Doctor doesn't want to do that to a degree. I love William Hartnell as the Doctor, and his performance is great. Vicky is all right, and I like Ian and Barbara too. So overall, 6.5.
All right. Okay. Cheers, Sammy.
Now I'm going to completely mess up pronouncing this next listener's name. It is Maria Kalatichau, one of those two. Anyway, she says, this story is kind of weird one for me. Strange mix of dark elements, but on the Benny Hill type comedy at times. I really like the first 2 episodes. Seeing all the TARDIS crew relaxing in ancient Rome felt very natural. The intrigue with the slave traders is interesting, and there is a genuine sense of a dark story as you wonder what will happen to Ian and Barbara. Poor Ian taken as a slave rowing in a galley ship. I don't know if I actually like all the comedy once we're in Nero's palace. Things like Barbara being chased by Nero seem to go on for ages, and the Doctor pretending to play a lyra or an ear seemed a bit silly. I read that William Hartnell really enjoyed this story for the more comedic elements, but for me, he actually is more believable as a dramatic character rather than a jokey one. I don't really enjoy the conceit of the Doctor playing a part in the fire of Rome. I know this is a sci-fi show, but it's a personal dislike of mine when important historical events somehow lead back to the Doctor. Not a bad story at all, but not fully to my taste.
Fair enough, yeah. Some good points there.
Good points. Let's do our audio review. This is Joe Sweeney.
Hello, Gary and Adam. Hope you're too well. This is great. This is my second classic Who review. I thought that time again will never come sooner. So anyway, let's start. The Romans. I can't remember much about this episode because I only watched it once, and that was months ago, but I will try my hardest to have my thoughts on it. And as you guys already know, I'm in the middle of watching my classic Who marathon. So anyway, the episode starts off nicely with the TARDIS arriving on a cliffside and then tumbled over. The sets were good. It's got some good storylines to it. The concept was okay, and Hartnell was at his best playing a Doctor. Ian and Bob and Vicky were good. And the supporting cast were okay, but it's quite a forgettable episode. So it's not awful, it's not brilliant, but it's okay to watch. On a personal note, I will say this, that watching Doctor Who in black and white makes us Whovians highly appreciate it. Because if it wasn't for Hartnell, there would be no Doctor Who at all. And also, we wouldn't be here talking about it, and you guys wouldn't have existed. And also, we would have been stuck in the days with boring old reality TV and soaps. So anyway, okay episode. So I'll give a score of a 6 out of 10. Hope you enjoy our podcast, guys. See you soon. Take care. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Yeah. That's a good point. God, imagine being stuck in a world with soaps.
Oh, I can't think of anything
hate
worse.
The soaps.
Crikey, Moses. Yeah, get rid of them. Right. I'm back on Facebook.
Yeah.
Lewis Palmer says, I do love this story. It's a fun romp that is an absolute joy to watch. Ian and Barbara's relationship with the Doctor has really grown from the hostility of their first meeting, and it's lovely to see them being best friends. It's a great, pure historical. Vicky is quite good, but can be a bit like Susan Mark II. The main reason I love this is because it has so much fun without ever going into Delta and the Bannerman levels of absurdity. But although I like the slavery subplot, it does sometimes clash with the otherwise light-hearted tone. Overall, immensely enjoyable romp, which gets an 8 out of 10.
Cheers, Lewis, a.k.a. the Gargantuan Apple.
Yes. Jim Cameron from the Crinoid podcast says,
great podcast.
A successful combination of funny and dramatic. Hartnell's having a whale of a time, and the comedy and Ian's exciting plotline counterpoints it well, with Barbara somewhere in the middle. Great fun, 7 out of 10.
Oh, cheers, Jim.
My wife, Natasha Aylott, jumped on and said, that brown-haired bloke looks a lot like a very young Jason Manford.
Does she mean Ian?
She does mean Ian, yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
maybe.
He does, yeah. That's my wife's contribution there. That brown-haired bloke. Danny Brown.
Big fan, is she?
Yeah, Danny Brown says, Doctor Who does carry on. It's great. Not much else to say apart from that 7.5.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Mark Atkinson, an enjoyable enough romp. Hartnell is good with the comedy and the story doesn't outstay its welcome. 6.5.
Cheers, Mark. Nice one.
Jeff Waddle.
Jeff, he just got in this morning, didn't he? I saw it.
Yes.
Saw his comment come in just in time.
He says, Hartnell at his best. Simple enough story, but never drags. When you think about it, it's quite dark, really, with poisonings, murders, people being killed in the arena, and finally, most of a city and its people burning to death. And yet, it's kind of a comedy at the same time. Not as good as The Crusades, but still a wee gem. 8 out of 10.
Oh, cheers, Jeff. Yeah.
That's good. That's a good point, actually. The Crusades.
Another one I haven't watched for ages.
Yeah. Right. Miles McKenzie, lastly on Facebook, says, still to get this episode, hoping it's a good story.
I think it is one that could divide opinion.
Yeah. It's definitely worth a watch, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely give it a watch. Yeah.
It's absolutely not one that we would say, no, I wouldn't bother with that one. You know, still give it, if you're undecided, still give it a go. It's you might like it. You probably will like it, actually. You'll like Hartnell for sure.
Yeah.
Anything on the Geeks Handbag?
No, didn't have anything this week on Geeks. No.
Yeah, it's quite because we said this when we were doing the schedule. I was like, it's not one that many people talk about, and even you, like I've said like 10 times over the past 2 weeks now, you actually you're like, hold on, the Romans, have I seen that one? I must have seen it. I must have it because I've got them all, but I can't remember it. So that's probably not a very popular Hartnell one.
Yeah, no, I'm glad thank you for everyone that commented, because I was a bit worried, mainly because I couldn't remember it, that it was one that perhaps people wouldn't have seen or wouldn't comment on. So I'm really pleased we got some comments from you guys about it, because it is an interesting story. So I was really keen to hear what people thought of it. And because it's in that box set with another one, I know sometimes people don't always buy the box sets, which also worried me. I thought, perhaps people won't have got it because it's in with another story and all that. So yeah, thanks to you guys who did comment. Yeah, it's interesting to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. Thank you as always for taking the time to do that. It's awesome. Next week, we are going back to the 10th Doctor. It's a David Tennant episode. Dude, what are we doing next week?
I don't really know. I'm doing that because I bet you hardly anyone will get that. But Mavis is in it, isn't she? From Chronos. We're doing the Lazarus experiment next week.
The Lazarus experiment. Yes, cool. I'll be very interested to hear what you think about this one, mate, because yes, I've got some feelings on this one.
Oh, cool. Excellent. Yeah, I'm looking forward to reviewing that one.
Yes. So as usual, we'd love to hear your points of view. So send us an email or a tweet or a Facebook, or better still, an audio clip. That'd be awesome. And to all the lurkers out there, and many of you, which we love you as well, just take that first step and jump onto your keyboard and type something or sending an audio clip. It would be awesome.
Yeah.
And I think we'll do there for 106. 108.
106.
I think we're going to do there, mate, for 108. Thank you for sticking with us and listening to episode 108 and all of the juicy news that we had to go through. Those squabbling kids, eh?
Yeah. Which side are you, Team Barrowman or Team Moff?
Oh, I'm not sure. I think I'm Team Barrowman at the minute.
Oh,
just
right.
Because the Moff's, he's done some unforgivable things with the show over the years. So, and
he's very cross.
He's very cross. So I'm sort of in the middle. I've got splinters in the bum, but I think I'm leaning towards Mr. Barrowman at the minute.
I bet you the Moth can't wait to blimmin' leave Doctor Who.
I can imagine, yeah.
I bet he's like, oh, should have left last year.
I should have packed up and gone when you're all moaning at me. You know.
He can't wait to get away from it.
Yeah. So, yes, and I hope you enjoyed our review of The Romans. And thank you for sending in your stuff too. Next week, The Lazarus Experiment. Mr. Tennant. We haven't seen Mr. Tennant in a while, so it'd be good to watch one of his and go through all that stuff. Head over to our website, www.bigblueboxpodcast.co.uk. From there, you can listen to all of our previous episodes, and you can also link off to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and all that gumph. You can also hit those big buttons right at the top as well, so you can subscribe on iTunes or RSS or whatever you like. And if you are an iTunes listener and you do subscribe, it would be amazing if you gave us a rating and a review, because that really helps us out heaps. So that'd be really good. Remember to check out Adam's channel, The Geek's Handbag. Some cracking stuff over there. You just need to do a search for The Geek's Handbag on YouTube and Facebook. Give him a like and a follow and a subscribe and all that stuff. Some great vids over there.
Cheers, dude.
It's all good. Rightio, I think we're going to do there. Really looking forward to speaking to you guys next week. My name's Gary.
My name's Adam.
And remember...
No, we've gone wrong.
Oh, let's do it again. And remember...
3, 2, 1. Oh.
Right, let's do it. 3, 2, 1. Oh, crikey. 3, 2, 1. Lonzy!